Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to an evening of poetry at Adrian's Memorial Library. We meet the third Thursdays of the month at 7 o'clock, and I try to have a feature for you. And Stefan Bolz is our feature for this evening, and he was gracious enough to agree to be our feature tonight. So please join me in giving Stefan a nice warm welcome.
Thank you. It's kind of interesting to be the poet of the month. It feels good. You know, you can go to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm Stefan. I'm the poet of the month," and they're like, "Ooh." So in my head, I did some different things.
Yeah,
you know,
with kiss the ring, right? The ring out, you know.
Right.
You can always ask them if I can give you my autograph if you like.
Yeah, no, I tried that, and people were just running. I don't know. I had big pencils, like really big pen. They didn't get it. So the next step would be Poet of the Year, and then from there it just goes up.
That's right.
It's a great start. Thank you. So I don't know where to start. I'm not really a poet. I write prose and fantasy, sci-fi. I have a couple of books with me that I might even leave here in the library. Once in a while, a poem squeezes out, and then says, "Hey, here I am." And so I'm gonna read you some of those. I might read one or two very short essays they don't rhyme. I still consider them poetry because they create an image of sorts. So my influences were, the first one is a little strange. It's good, but it's strange because I don't know anybody else that has that. Happened to my father. I grew up in Germany. As bedtime stories, my father read to me from Reader's Digest German poets. The books were this big.
Oh my God.
They're like miniature books, and I don't know. You get one a month. I don't know really how it worked, but he had like a stack. The stack was this high. Were like 8 books. Like tiny little books. I would probably not be able to read right now because it's so small print.
Right. Yeah.
But he read to me German poetry as bedtime stories. After that, I had no connection with writing at all. I learned a trade. I was a very bad student at school. I learned a trade as a machine electrician. We had no writing classes there. There was no writing, We were happy that we didn't get electrocuted. There was no additional art form. The art form was staying alive, basically, right? So, electrician. Then I went to the army, and there's not much writing there. You have like a checklist where you're just like, okay, this vehicle is clean. That's the amount of writing you do when you're there. And then I was married. I had a son on the way. I was 23. I'm in my car driving home from work in traffic, and I realized, or there was this question all of a sudden that came up, and that question was, can this be all there is to life? Is this it?
Right.
And it caught me by surprise because I grew up Catholic, but I didn't have any deeper connections to it. Nothing spiritual going on. It was just, that question rose up, and it bothered me. It's like, that's it? This is it? I'm going to live my life now and nothing else is going to happen. I was happily married with a son, everything. It was a good life from the outside, but inside there was something missing. A couple of years later, I ordered a book. I got the wrong book, and the book had quotes from a book that I then ordered in English, which is called A Course in Miracles, which is a spiritual path, psychological path that you do on your own, study, self-study. There's a whole backstory how it was conceived and written and stuff like that. But I'm going to read you something because this is my second piece of influence for the writing. Because it's written in part in iambic pentameter, Shakespeare's language, and it's a very beautiful language and very beautiful content. So I'm going to read that. It says, "Let us be still an instant and forget all things we ever learned, all thoughts we had, and every preconception that we hold of what things mean and what their purpose is. Let us remember not our own ideas of what the world is for. We do not know. Let every image held of everyone be loosened from our minds and swept away." So I started this when I was in my mid-20s, this is like 30 years ago, and it kind of companion to my life now. But this language definitely informed my writing to a big degree. Sometimes unconsciously, sometimes I try to kind of do it and then it doesn't work. The best way is to just let it flow, and then it kind of automatically goes onto that path once in a while, hopefully. So I started writing. I came here in '97. I started at Ulster County Community College, and I took a writing class. That was my first writing class in my whole life. Creative writing, I don't know, 101 or something, at BOCES in Kingston. And there was a great teacher. There was an exercise. I did the writing exercise, and she called me after class and she says, "We need to talk." And I'm like, So she said, "You have to write. You need to write. You need to start writing." I had no clue, but I took her by her word, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." I wrote some stories, some screenplays. One of them almost got optioned. And then I went to therapy. I think it was like 2005-ish, 2004. And my therapist worked not as a regular psychotherapist. She worked with imagery, almost like shamanic journeys, a little bit like that. So you would go into a conflict in your body, and then from there you would go into images that you see, and from there hopefully something would happen and something would solve itself or something like that. And a lot of the writing came out of that period, because she told me to, another smart thing, she told me to write down the sessions. So I want to read you one or two of those. And the first one I'm going to read you is called, we were so still that the room thought we were gone. So the first poem, I'm really apologizing. This is not very uplifting. It came out of a session because my parents got divorced when I was 11, and I went through a hard time. So this is called Isolation. And this was based on one of those images. It is the hour before dawn. The sky is cold and gray. Before me, the tundra extends into infinity. A high plateau, isolated, vast, and raw. I stand next to a low fire looking out onto the horizon. 11, maybe 12 years old. A tent not far from me, on the other side of the fire pit. Inside lie my parents. They had just died. My mother passed last night from a short, violent fever. My father's body is still warm. He died this morning about an hour ago. His agonizing screams left with him. The chilling wind cuts into me. Complete isolation covers me, wraps its arms around me, holds me, won't let go. So this is an image that came up when I was kind of working through the divorce of my parents. I was 11, I went with my dad, and my sister went with my mother. And I felt very alone as a child. And that image was part of the kind of feeling, exactly. So in that time, when I did the therapy, I did a lot of writing. Another one that came on, it's an essay, short essay. It's called "You Are Perfect." It's pretty much exactly the opposite of this poem. So it gives you a little bit of a range of what that period meant in my life. It was very some very dark aspects and some very light aspects as well. You are perfect. It happened on one of my recent evening walks down the beautiful country road near my house, alongside a meandering stream, passing a pond that was completely still at that time of day. The sun was just about to set, spilling its warm light into the trees behind me. As I walked, I thought about my life and all the things I had done and all the things I did not do. The projects I had started and never finished. The relationships that came and went. Things I could have done differently. I should have gone to college, I think often. Actually, I did go to college and stopped about 15 credits before graduation. I will finish one day, I was telling myself. I wasn't unhappy in general, but there was this nagging feeling that I should have done something more with my life. Something substantial, something accountable. I felt that I lived uncomfortably far below my potential. As I looked at the constant stream of thoughts that seemed to come out of nowhere, as part of an endless chain of disturbing truths about myself, I suddenly, as if opening a door, had a completely different thought. This one seemed very quiet, like the still pond at the end of my road. It didn't move, it stayed. It radiated, like a butterfly on an aircraft carrier. Amidst the chaos that was my conscious mind, it stood. You are perfect. It said. These words did not contradict all the other thoughts. They completely eliminated them altogether without leaving a trace. You are perfect. The power of this simple statement brought tears to my eyes. I started to sob. Walking down the quiet road, my dog sniffing the ground next to me, I couldn't stop crying. I felt the absolute truth of this statement. I knew at that moment that it was true, that this was in fact the only truth about myself. The joy that accompanied it, the utter relief that whatever I had thought about myself prior had no meaning at all, made me weep. Don't change anything about yourself, for if you do, you're denying that you are perfect, and you will give your thoughts a reality they do not have. Do not change anything, for if you do, you forget that there's nothing in you that needs to change. This episode lasted about 2 minutes before the others came back. 20 F-15 fighter jets landed on the aircraft carrier, completely unaware of the butterfly. The sound, in contrast, was deafening. The butterfly, however, wasn't even aware of them. Quietly and unmistakably, he continued his song. You are perfect. Who do I listen to? Who will I listen to? What do I want to believe about myself? What voice do I allow entrance into my mind? There are but two, and only one of them is true. So you are perfect, obviously it doesn't mean you're perfect in an egotistical way. It's more like, as you are right now, you're 100%. There's nothing to judge about or nothing to change or add or subtract or something. So that's kind of the range. That's basically also the range of my life, basically. Not so much anymore, but in this 10-15 year period, it was from the first poem to this poem and everything in between. A lot of stories and images came out of that time. One of them, I remember exactly when it came to me. This is not a political poem at all, but it came during President Obama's first inauguration speech in January of 2008. I was sitting in my kitchen, I was listening. I don't have a lot of political interest, but something with that speech caught me and grabbed me, and I felt like I wanted to write something, and I wrote this poem, and the poem is called The Call to Greatness. And this one actually rhymes. Sorry, I'm not a poet. The call to greatness, ever present, lifts us up to higher ground, calls us to our highest purpose, freedom's choice, no longer bound. We will meet it either trembling or with steady resting hand, for we cannot hide forever from our destiny's command. Our oath has not been broken, our promise is still our word. From afar our truth has spoken, all through time has it been heard. Here I stand on ground made holy by this ancient symphony, as I reach for my own glory, for my Father's company. There, with cold and bloodless fingers, darkened veil and evil sense, grips my throat, my heart, and lingers, fear employed for my defense. Fear of death has lost its power and its ever-present threat. It is not the great deceiver, but my greatness that I dread. Should I dare to leave my smallness and my littleness behind? Should I forfeit my own blindness for a vision that is kind? And then one day, maybe not this day, and maybe not even tomorrow, but one day I know it for sure, my friend, we will exchange joy for our sorrow. That day will come, and it will be the day when we take a deep breath and we pick ourselves up and we dust ourselves off, and with outstretched fingers we touch the face of God. I stole the last two lines. They were I don't have it in here. They first Ronald Reagan used them in a speech. With outstretched fingers we touch the face of God. But before that, a poet, he was a 21-year-old Navy fighter pilot, and he wrote a poem about flight. He was, and you know, he's way up in the clouds, and he touches spheres that we can't even imagine. And the last two sentences is and with outstretched fingers I touch the face of God. So, you know, I integrated it. It's part of mine, even though those two lines are not technically. And this is on tape now. I don't know what to do. Maybe we'll cut it. I think I'll be all right.
Yeah.
So the next thing that happened was, just with regard to the writing, I'm in real estate, and I have this colleague. I worked in the Stone Ridge office, and I have this colleague, and she has a friend, and this friend had a printer, and the printer didn't work. And I'm very good with printers and computers and stuff. So she asked me to go and fix her printer or connect the printer. So I did. She's an astrologer. So I was there for an hour and a half. And while I was trying to concentrate on setting up the printer, she was giving me her whole spiel about the problems with Gemini. I was like, wait a minute. So I didn't keep a lot of what she told me, except for the last two lines. She said, you have to go back to therapy, which I did for a year. I wasn't with Julie, with my therapist, my friend. And the second line was, and stop editing yourself. And she probably said, like, for Christ's sake, stop editing yourself. And I was like, I don't know what that means. But I'll go back to therapy, fine. You know. So I apologized that I had no recollection of anything she told me except those 2 lines, and she was okay in the end. So I went to Julie, and usually what we do is I lie on her table and we go into those images and whatever. And then there's another thing that she does, which is a sandbox. So she has a sandbox and she has a big shelf with figurines, hundreds of figurines. And she works a lot with kids. So what you do is you take one of the figurines by chance, you don't think about it, and you put them in a sandbox. And then afterwards you look at it. And it's amazing what you can find out about your life, of how you positioned yourself within those, there's a dragon on this side, and it's like, or whatever. So usually that's fine. I usually get what it means, but this time was totally different. There was a rooster, a wolf, a horse, a dragon, a frog on a skateboard, and 3 feathers. Like I stuck 3 feathers in the side in this little cave thingy. I said, I have no idea what this means. And she said, you know what, just write it down as you usually do. And a couple of days later, I said, okay, I'm going to write it down. And I started. Once upon a time, a young rooster lived on a farm on the eastern shore, somewhere between the tundra-like highlands to the south and the lush, low grasslands of the north. His name was Joshua A. Long. And then 5 months later, I had this book in my hand. So, I mean, there's a whole different story with how this, books continued or how I could finish it and then edit it and publish it and stuff. But a lot of the stories that I wrote, or the short essays I wrote during that time when I wrote those other ones, here and there made it into this, and this is a fable. It's basically Joshua A. Long is a rooster. I don't know why it's a rooster. I'm like, okay, I'm just doing what you tell me. I have no idea. Why would I pick a rooster for the main character of a book? But I realized while I was writing it that it was me, and that it is a spiritual journey of looking for what's missing. Because he says he's doing his thing in the pen all day, but at night when all was still, when the busy pecking and roosting and strutting around quieted down, when the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the great lake to the east, Joshua felt a longing inside him, a longing he could neither explain nor talk about, nor even fully grasp. It was just there whenever the noises of the day ebbed down to stillness, when the rustling and bustling inside the coop stopped and all was quiet. And I realized that was my longing from when I was 21 in the car. So there must be some more. Must be more to life than this. And this is kind of like a continuation. And another poem that rhymes also, mostly, that came of one of those sessions with Julie. Joshua the rooster and Gray the wolf and Creek the warhorse, the 3, they become friends and they go on this journey together to find the 3 feathers from Joshua's dream. A lot happens, and then they come to this city that is completely in ruins, and they do something. I don't want to give it away because if somebody ever wants to read it, but what happens is suddenly the ruins of the city the walls start to build themselves back up, but not out of stone and wood and mortar, but out of light, out of condensed light. And you see the walls and all the details, engravings and everything. This big cathedral builds itself again with all the towers and everything, and out of light. So the whole city, the ruins of the whole city was rebuilt out of condensed light. And that image was incredible. It came out of one of the sessions with Julie. And it found itself in the book like so many other things. And there's this plate of a huge stone plate in the ruins, and then later on where the altar is to the cathedral, and there's something written on it. And what was written was a poem that I wrote a couple of years earlier, and it's called A Stream of Stars. A stream of stars forever calls you home, to where you will return, to where you still belong. The doors have long since opened, unlocked the gates of time. The path to truth is open, the stars are now aligned. To start an ancient journey to where you have always been, to follow your own yearning, to gather your own kin. Your fate is sealed, your destiny is written in the sky. Your home at last revealed, you will not pass it by. And then one day the sands of time will vanish from your hearts and leave no trace of them behind except a stream of stars. So anyway, so that's that. And then it started to, and then I wrote other books, and suddenly characters started to write poems. I'm like, what the heck, Characters in the book started to write poems, so I can't take any credit for it. I'm just writing down kind of what I hear from them. One of them is, this is a very short one. It's called From Now On. Like the wind over forgotten plains, when the storm clouds whisper names, like the girl that came from light, like the bird, it was born of night. That your promise is our fate, that your fight was our gate. Freedom's voices never cease, your sacrifice became our peace. Like the wind over forgotten plains, and the breaking of our chains, at the ending of their reigns, from now on, just your memory remains. So there was one. I don't want to really go deep into the books. Let me see. Okay. But I'll read you a couple more. This is, so the first one was the Three Feathers, then the Fourth Sage, which is kind of the continuation of the Three Feathers, but it's more of a dystopian society, but also there's some animals in it and stuff. And then there was the Time of the White Dragon. And White Dragon is an apocalyptic event, the first 36 hours of an apocalyptic event as seen through the eyes of an 18-year-old girl in Long Island. I don't know why Long Island, except Amy's from Long Island, so I feel like, okay, maybe, and basically a great evil comes upon the land, and there's this legend of this white dragon that if there's this powerful evil comes, somebody has to look for the white dragon, and because only the white dragon can fight the evil. And Casey, the girl, because of things that happened to her in the past, she has this amulet and stuff. She realizes that, or somebody tells her that she's the only one that can find the white dragon. So there's a character in the book that his name is Douglas McNamara, and he's the one that told Casey that she's the only one that can find the white dragon. Everything's on her. And he wrote a couple of poems that he calls Poetry of the Apocalypse. So I'm going to read you two of those. And one of the poems, the other poem I want to read to you, is part of the Ontauk warrior song, which is a tribe in a different world where Casey has to go to train to find the white dragon. It's a whole thing, you know. So it says here, this is part of the On-Talk Warrior song. You're not shadow dancing on a wall, disappearing at dawn, forever unremembered. You are the sun. You're not sand blown across the plains, randomly falling, never to be found. You are the wind. You are not the island, badgered ceaselessly, hollowed and hassled until you are gone. You are the ocean. You are not the flower withering away in the heat of day, carelessly uprooted by a giant's hand. You are the earth. Douglas McNamara wrote poetry for his son because he had to leave his son in order to go to Casey and tell her that she's the only one that can find the white dragon. Lullaby to My Son by Douglas McNamara. Sleep now, my child, lay your head to rest, and leave your woes to the waking. Let the easterly wind take your dreams to a place where you'll never find a heart that is aching. Through the sky and across the horizon, onto the mountain's crest, to the top of the world, the clouds winged and whirled, high above a bald eagle's nest. Where gone is the fear of tomorrow, far beyond the storm cloud's reach, and the tight-clawed grasp of sorrow, and a no man's land under siege. Sleep now, my son, for I wander on through the land and across the plains, to bring back the one through whom all is undone, so she can unfasten our chains. The dragon will rise, and in its shadow our souls will be restored, and the land will return to the living. So that's one of his poems to his son while he is on his journey. The other one is also a poem that's called The Long Night, to his son also. When I want quietness, when I long to put my heart to rest, when I'm forsaken, forlorn, and far from home, when I reach the end of the road and the bottom of the ocean floor, I think of you. When the sun's warmth evades me, when the flowers have lost their scent, when emptiness calls me to live in its house, to call it friend, I think of you. When my dreams fade to darkness, when I long for a distant star, in the hour before dawn, in the dark night, when love seems nothing but an ancient scar, I think of you. So this concludes the fantasy section of the poetry. I have a couple more, but this is a little different. So after the fantasy writing, I had this image in my head of this girl that was in an abusive home. She was playing the guitar since she was 6 or 7 years old. They were very, very poor. At some point, she only had one string on the guitar left. That's how little money they had. And you would, when you can't buy strings, you take the old strings and you put them in hot water, and they somehow last another 6 months after that. So she did that. Anyway, so she always wanted to become a singer. And when she's 17, her brother dies, and her father's long gone, and she can't live with her mother, so she runs away only with her guitar on her back. And this is the book. It's called Six String. And while she's on her journey, she goes through a crazy, horrendous journey. She becomes homeless, and because she has no money, she's on the street. Somebody steals her guitar, she has to get it back, and all this whole story. She ends up in Seattle and San Francisco. She writes an album during that time. Now, I'm not a songwriter, so it's just poetry, I sent it to Lady Gaga. She never responded, so I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I should have, though, maybe. So this is just a little bit of a different poetry, because it's kind of in song form, and this is her way of dealing with her situation with her mother and the abusive household and stuff like that. The song is called "I Cannot Leave, But Neither Can I Stay." You're the thunder in the mountains, the falling waters clash, the river through the village, the blinding lightning flash. You bind me with your will. You hold me till I'm still, till I cannot breathe and will not make a sound, to escape your fire, to become unbound. I cannot leave, but neither can I stay, for I want to hold you and push you away. I have no more words, I spent them all on crying. And in the calmest time of morning, when the sun comes up at dawn, I will be gone, or I would be left dying. My heart will never be the same, you engraved in it your name. Your pain was not yours to give, my life was but mine to live. And even if I break free, my prison goes with me. I cannot leave, but neither can I stay, for I want to hold you and push you away. I have no more words, I spent them all on crying. And in the calmest time of morning, when the sun comes up at dawn, I will be gone, or I would be left dying. You cannot reach me now, for I am yours no longer. Don't come with me, I will go alone. I am leaving what never was my home. In time, I can only ever get stronger. I cannot leave, but neither can I stay. For I want to hold you and push you away. I have no words, I spent them all on crying. And in the calmest time of morning, when the sun comes up at dawn, I will be gone, or I would be left dying. So she writes this whole album. She writes songs. I read a lot about. I read Jules Jewell, the singer. She has an autobiography, Never Broken. I think I listened to it like 5 times. It's an amazing account. She was homeless, and it was a crazy time for her, and she wrote a good amount of her first album while she lived in a car, in San Diego. So I stole some things from that. Let's just put it that way. I want to read you one more of that. So this is called I Am Me. Because she's going through this crisis, obviously. She has to figure out who she is. Because who she was, or still is is this child that is kind of just like a candle in the wind. She has nowhere to grab onto other than her music. I want to be me. I want to be free. The voice inside kept no longer quiet. Tell you what I'm about, laugh and cry and shout, lift my arms toward the sky and never have to tell you why. I want to be me, I want to be free. The voice inside kept no longer quiet. I don't want to be afraid any longer. I don't want to hide anymore. Everything can only make me stronger, and I will be bolder and I will be taller, and I will work harder and I will not cower anymore. I want to be me, I want to be free. The voice inside kept no longer quiet. Life can no longer push me down. I can stand and hold my own. Stretch out my hands, be still inside the storm. Fear is no longer an option, for I was born to be free, born to be me, born so the voice inside would no longer be quiet. And I reach out to you, reach all around the world, no longer silent, I will be heard, and we will sing, and we will stand across the shore from land to land. For we are free, and our voice inside will no longer be quiet, will no longer be quiet. The last one I'm going to read you is Sixth String, which is the, if you will, the title song of her album. A friend of mine actually wrote a song about it, and he you can listen to it on Spotify. I got you when I was 6 years old. Couldn't reach around you, glad that I had found you. You were wholly mine. You were my friend as long as I remember. I whispered my sorrows into your ear. You comforted me when I was tender and took away my fear. 6 strings, everything is good. 5 strings, I only wish I could. 4 strings, barely holding on. 3, 2, I don't know what to do. 1 string left, I'm out of luck. Don't leave me now. I'll get through somehow. Through Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, we covered a lot of ground. Then Caldwell, Portland, San Francisco. Lost you in Chicago, but somehow you're still around. I cried for you, I held you like you were a teddy bear. However dark it got, you were always there. Waiting for my birthday, saving money on the way. Grab a little change here and there. Don't take the bus, keep the fare. Save up for strings, no clothes to wear. Gotta wait it out until I figure out how I can get back to 6 strings. Everything is good. 5 strings, I only wish I could. 4 strings, barely holding on. 3, 2, don't know what to do. 1 string left, I'm out of luck. Don't leave me now. I'll get through somehow. You shielded me from arrows. You kept the swords at bay. You told me that you love me in so many ways. I would have died without you. I think I know that now. For you were always with me and got me through somehow. 6 strings, everything is good. 5 strings, I only wish I could. 4 strings, barely holding on. 3, 2, I don't know what to do. 1 string left, I'm out of luck. Don't leave me now. I've gotten through somehow. All right. Well, I think that's all I got. Let me just see. Let me just double check here. Does anybody have any questions? They have to be poetic, though. If you can make them rhyme, that would be great. Because it's a poetry night.
That would be great, yes. Is it a coincidence that the titles of your books are like 3 feathers, a 4th something, 6 strings? Is that a coincidence?
My God. I don't know.
There's something with 5 in it.
I mean, listen, the thing with writing is there is your whole subconscious is at work like crazy, you know. And the more that sentence of this by this friend of my friend, stop editing yourself. I don't think you can do anything more than that as a writer or a musician or an artist in general or in life. You know, let it out a little bit more. You know, let yourself come forward. So, I mean, the other thing is, except for the Rooster guy in the first book, most of my main characters are teenage girls. And Chloe, our daughter, said, you know, you're like a teenage girl, I guess. I don't know. You know, you're writing about. So whatever the subconscious does, you know, just don't stand in the way. That's all I can say. You know, But I don't know, maybe there's something 3, 4, I guess 6 string. I have to write one with 5 now.
Yes. I thought maybe you already had.
No.
Was 6 string the one that was almost optioned
No,
for a movie?
no. What was almost optioned was a screenplay that I wrote that had. It's nothing to do with any of
Because
this.
I could, when you were talking about it, I could see it as a movie. Even
Right,
6
I can see
string.
this as a movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Right.
and that you wrote the album and that you have a musician that could set
Right, I
songs
know.
your poems to music,
Right.
right? So, yeah, and I loved it. I think that's great.
Any other questions?
I have one other. I mean, obviously, your first language was German, I assume.
Yeah.
When you write now, you write as an English speaker.
I can't write in German for the life of me. I have no.
Okay.
It sounds very weird and grammatically completely incorrect, and I tried to. It's not working.
Because I assume it would be a hard process to actually be thinking it in German.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
translating it would be a mess.
Right. No,
Okay.
it's not possible. I think poetry works a little bit in German. I can probably do some poems in German because of my, with the German poets as a child. But it's too much. Any other questions? We're good.
I've got one. Just several books that I've read in regard to how to develop one's own writing.
Right.
And then you covered it nicely. But when you were young and were still being that creative soul that you were, did you ever look back and try to figure out where did it come from? From your parents? From any early?
No, I had nobody in my family. It was very. My father was an accountant. My mother was at home. Then they got divorced. My stepmother was working the same company that my father worked. There was no artistic. My grandfather knew 7 languages. He translated books into Chinese, and I mean he was amazing in that regard, but nothing artistic or writing or anything like that. So I feel for me it came out of this longing that I felt as a child. I felt alone, and I felt this like, there must be something else, and I think that's what kind of pushed for that to come out.
Well, thanks for sharing with us.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's weird to bring books to a library, but if you want to buy one, they are also on Amazon, and I think I'm gonna leave a couple here in the library to have them available.
Oh, that's nice.
So.